watch it if you like.
Yeah,
You know,
cool movie.
we could talk about a movie that really did blow me away. Uh, a movie that I thought was, I think, earns its place in the hallowed halls of legendary films, which is Battleship Potemkin.
Mm. I mean,
Uh,
the big daddy of this year, I would say.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, I think so. Certainly, the most famous movie from this year, one of
Hmm.
the most famous silent films. Uh, this is the second film from Sergei Eisenstein.
Hmm.
He'd come from the theater, and he had made one short and then one previous movie called Strike, that came out this same year. But Battleship Potemkin, I watched Strike as well, but Battleship Potemkin is just leagues ahead
Mm.
of kind of anything that I've seen so
I
far.
mean, yeah,
Like,
it sticks out for sure.
I feel like we tend to try and resist these established narratives of what is important
Hmm.
in film history and what is this revolutionary thing, or at least we don't try and resist them actively as much as try and look at these things clearly
Hmm.
and come up with our own interpretations and not uh, succumb to the established narrative of what are the important movies. But
Yeah.
holy moly, this movie is it's like a huge step ahead, I think, in presentation, in emotional engagement, in editing, in style. It's mind blowing. This
Hmm.
movie's so good.
I think too, uh, it like I don't know if there's like a lot of individual things that this movie necessarily is doing that hasn't been done before. It's the
Hmm.
fact that it's using them all in conjunction and all with real intent. I feel like that's kind of what stuck out to me with it is it's like
Yeah.
even a lot of the kind of the more forward thinking like editing techniques and things like that in it are like they're not this movie isn't sort of like breaking through any massive barriers in terms of like the individual technical things it's doing. It's more that it's just like this movie just feels better than and by better I just mean it I think it's using all these tools that have been building up over the last several years of filmmaking and it's just putting them all to like the best possible use.
Yeah. I mean, I think it helps a lot that this movie is very focused in its aims.
Hmm.
Uh, it being a propaganda movie.
Yeah.
Uh, but what comes out of that is its ability to um, say, like, what am I doing at every moment, and how can I emphasize that the best. uh, so, like you're saying, there isn't necessarily any individual thing that this movie has done before, except take these kind of things that have been played with a little bit, like um close like this movie has way more effective close-ups than much of what we've seen
Hmm.
so far. uh it's got shots which are fairly like metaphorical, um of the moment, but it's got all this really quick editing, so it will hop to these shots that get a vibe across and then go back to what was happening.
Hmm.
And it's been done before, but it's so effective in here because uh it knows what it's doing with every shot.
Mm.
If we were to look at something like Kino Eye from last year, a lot of that kind of quick cutting felt somewhat unmotivated.
Hmm.
But there are individual shots that are not necessarily telling you any new information, but they're contributing thoughtfully to the feeling of the
Hmm.
scene.
Yeah, that is actually a really good way of putting it, I think. Well, had you seen this movie before?
Oh yeah, plenty of times. It had
Okay.
been a while though.
Same.
It had been long enough that I forgot how good it is.
Yeah, I mean, I like this movie more watching it this time than I think I ever have.
Me too.
Probably because I was able to watch it in like greater context and like I appreciated the things it was doing a lot more. One
Hmm.
of my like early things in college was I had to recut this movie to like
Me too.
tell a different story. It was just like do something with it. The thing I tried to do is I tried to make it into a pirate movie, which was not the most inspired choice, I feel like. I think the most interesting thing I did was there's a shot early on of like the captain of the battleship sort of looking through binoculars, and then I took that shot and a different shot of a bunch of boats, and I put like the binocular mask over it.
Oh, nice.
Several other people in the class, I think, did much more interesting things with it. Like I feel like the one that I there are two that I want to talk about. One is that my friend Cody Jackson, who might be a future guest on the show,
Ooh.
did one that I didn't even know that he had done this at the time, but the teacher showed it as like an example of how to do this assignment right. And it was so good that I actually, for a moment, I didn't remember it wasn't actually part of the movie. I was like, when does that scene happen? And I was like, oh no, that isn't actually in the real movie. But he took there's a shot of like the priest on the ship. He's got this great face. And there's footage where he's sort of like tapping a cross in his hand.
Mm-hmm.
The re-edit of it was that every time he like the cross hit his palm, it cut to like a scene of violence, like someone being shot or like a building exploding or like this sort of stuff. And it was like, the violence done in the name of religion. You know, this was all inferred from just the sort of like sequence of edits. And that was the one that like the teacher showed us like, this is the best one that anyone's ever done. And then I didn't find out until years later that's my friend had made that one. And then the other one is someone, I think probably just as a joke, took the shots of them like cleaning the cannons and put like sultry, like suggestive music over it. Which is such a dumb thing, but is I think showed a much greater sort of like I think it's a much better re-edit than what I did, where I like tried to make this like pirate action scene out of it, where it's like this is super simple. They're just taking a bunch of shots that are sort of like vaguely suggestive once you put like silly music over them. But it's in terms of like taking something and re-editing it and recontextualizing it, I think that actually was one of the better examples that I saw in that class.
I guess I took the same class and got the same assignment as you at a different time.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know that I didn't remember that it was specifically Battleship Potemkin that we had to do this assignment on. I just remembered that I did it with this. But as you're describing all of this, it all feels very much in line with this kind of Soviet style of editing that we're seeing come together of thinking about the associations within the edit. So it's a really thematically appropriate that the professor who was it that assigned this for you?
Camilo Rojas.
Camilo. Okay, somebody else must have just used his.
I don't know if he came up with that assignment or whatever. I think that was just what the class was.
I took an editing class at DCC with a different professor, but and it had the same assignment, but I think it gets at some of the same ideas that the Russians are playing with lately, with Kuleshov and Vertov and such, thinking about the nature of the relationship between shots and how to contextualize emotion within that. So I think that's really cool, the stuff that you're talking about. What I did was I re-edited the movie to be a kaiju movie. There are a lot of shots in this movie of people running from things or pointing off screen and like looking, even kind of looking up and pointing off screen and going, oh my god, look at that thing. So I spliced a bunch of that stuff together to make it seem like there was a big monster.
Yeah. Great.
I guess back to the actual movie.
Right.
This is not a monster movie or a pirate movie. Though there is some
it's a mutiny
criticism
movie
of religion in here. Yes, it is a mutiny movie. It is set It is based on the true story that is kind of happening on the eve of the Russian
Hmm.
Revolution. Um, and there are, in the broad strokes, there are a bunch of sailors on a battleship called Potemkin, and they are getting fed this kind of rotten, disgusting meat, and just terrible food by their superiors, uh, and they're saying like, how can you feed us this food? Like, look, there's maggots in it, and they call the ship's doctor up, and he's just like, these are fine, just wash them off, you
Yeah.
know.
Just scrape the maggots off. It'll be fine.
More and more disrespect that they're getting from their superiors, uh, who are very like clearly kind of meant to be the bourgeoisie, um, and kind of act in this way of how they're controlling the lives of the workers and treating them like dirt, right?
Hmm.
And so they make these plans to kind of band together and uh, kind of show their solidarity as workers. In this case, they are in the military, but there's a lot of parallels in this movie between the worker and owner
Hmm.
uh, dynamic. Um, and so when the mutiny is effectively a military strike, what they're
Mm.
doing in this movie. And I think that if you were to compare it to his previous movie, Strike, in Strike, it portrays the bourgeoisie as like bumbling and like foolish.
Mm.
Uh, they're just these like rich fat cats who uh, are, you know, just silly and stupid in their wealth. But in Battleship Potemkin, they're genuinely menacing and threatening.
Yeah.
uh this movie really makes an emotional case, more than anything else, for what is happening. uh there's like intellectual stuff going on. There's, allegory and whatnot. But I think what's so powerful about this movie and why it grabs you so much is that, like, you feel for what's happening and you care about what's happening, because it, like, you're watching people getting killed that are trying to do the right thing for, like, not accepting that they're gonna eat like maggoty meat,
Hmm.
um and so, yeah, I think it's very effective in that way. I honestly have not seen many movies being this, like, emotionally gripping.
Mm.
Just from like the kind of broad strokes of what's happening being told so well.
I think it does such a good job of like focusing on like reaction shots. I feel like there's a lot more, like you were saying, there's a lot of close-ups in this, and a lot of like a lot of scenes play out instead of in like these like big wide master shots like a lot of silent movies tend to do. A lot of
Yeah,
the scenes in this tend to cut between like close-ups of individual people in a space or in a room. Um, there's a lot of, yeah, just like faces reacting to things. It really kind of like puts you into, I don't know, this movie gets subjective very well. I feel like
yeah,
a lot of the other things we've seen tend to be a bit more objective and sort of like, here's a scene. It's theatrical in that way, right? Where it's like you can see all the characters they're acting out in the scene we're observing. It's kind of fly on the wall. Whereas this movie really kind of feels like it's putting you into the action or into the emotion in a much kind of more I don't know, yeah, subjective way.
yeah. And in addition to like some of the other formal stuff going on in this movie, there are so many amazing compositions in
Mm.
this.
Oh yeah.
Like, there are hundreds of shots in this movie, like way more shots in this movie than most other movies, and almost all of them have some like really interesting angle or like shadow being cast or like object in the frame that's creating like an interesting shape. Like, it's like he can't resist making really cool compositions with every shot.
Hmm.
And you could pull almost any of these shots out, and they're just beautiful individually.
Yeah, it's funny because I rewatching this, I was like, I had such kind of flashbacks to just like scrubbing through parts of the movie and like picking individual shots out that I wanted to like
Hmm.
use in the re-edit. So it's like there's sections of this movie that I remember super super well because I had to like go through them with a comb and like take, you know, individual frames out here and there and things like that. But yeah, this movie is a visual masterclass kind of. It is like, yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, this movie's famous for a reason. It's real good.
Yeah. So the officers on the ship are basically kind of they call everyone up to the front, and or to the bow of the boat, and there's once again this really cool shot being framed by the turrets of the
Mm,
boat,
yeah.
where with all of the soldiers standing in between them, and they say, whoever likes the food that we've got, step forward. And all of the class traitors and and officers and weenies step forward, and they're like, "Okay, great. You're the ones who we aren't going to kill." Uh, so pretty much all of the crew is about to get murdered over insubordination
Hmm.
because they're not happily eating gross food. There is a primary character who forgetting his name
Is
off the
it
top of my head.
Vakulanchuk? Vakulin
Vakulinchuk.
Vakulanchuk.
Vakulinchuk is the kind of principal person who is organizing all of the uh, workers, or
Hmm. The crew.
is behind the mutiny. And he says, okay, now's the time, basically. And as a group of soldiers is put under a blanket about to just be blindly shot at, he yells to the people shooting, like, these are your brothers, like,
Yeah.
you can't do this, like, and they, like, you can't just kill these people over nothing. And they hesitate for a second, and in that hesitation, all hell breaks
Yeah.
loose, and
Ah,
they
great scene.
they start uh, capturing and throwing the officers off the boat or killing them, and eventually there's a scuffle in one of the rooms of the ship, and Vakulinchuk is killed,
Hmm.
and he becomes this martyr
Hmm.
later on. Eventually, they're able to take over the entire boat, and there's like a scolding priest there
Hmm.
too. I guess just in a moment of, we don't like religion,
Yeah.
man.
That they knocked down the stairs.
Yes, yeah. He's like an old man, and they just like push him down the stairs, and it seems like a little brutal, but also he's being a jerk, so I guess he deserves it. Um, Eventually, they succeed, and they raise up a red flag for communism, and it's the one hand painted part of the movie is the red
Right.
flag. The
Yeah.
rest of it is just straight up black and white. So we got a bit of a Schindler's List kind of thing going on, or Sin City.
Which I mean, at this
Um,
point, I'm just realizing that's just a silent movie thing. Like, there's a lot of kind of selective color use.
for sure, for
Much
sure,
more so than I ever realized that there was. So.
yeah. Uh, Vakulinchuk dies, and they bring the boat back to shore as triumphant workers' heroes. They tell the story of what happened, and this kind of heroic group of sailors who had overthrown their masters. And a lot of this is happening at the same time that kind of revolutionary activity is happening on the
Hmm.
mainland, and the people on the boat were inspired by that. And so they tell the story of what happened on the boat, and they make a memorial on shore for Vakulinchuk, his body is they put his body in a tent, and then people line up really, really far to go and pay their respects to him. Uh, I was watching this with a friend of mine who is Russian,
Hmm.
and uh, she was reading out all of the all of the Russian intertitles as they
Oh yeah.
went by, uh, and I also put a communist hat I have on her, uh, just so we could. Because I'm always chasing that immersive 4D experience
There you go.
with every movie. But she was saying that this scene reminded her of Lenin, and how people will line up to see
Mm.
Lenin's body and pay their respects to him.
Which I'm sure is like
Uh,
intentional. I mean, I don't know,
yeah,
but like that's, very topical for when this movie was made.
exactly. This movie came out shortly after Lenin died.
Hmm.
I don't know if they had like a kind of formalized memoriam
Right.
mausoleum
We don't know
situation
if
for
the
him
mummy
yet.
was ready yet.
Yeah, if the Lenin mummy was ready yet, but it does have some similarities,
Hmm.
and I guess it speaks also to this kind of Soviet way of having these kind of individual heroes that we worship for their qualities of, revolutionary spirit
Mm.
or whatever, which is kind of interesting in this movie because part of the point that it's making, I think, with the way that it's being presented, is this kind of collectivist point where Vakulinchuk is like one of the main named characters, but he dies very quickly, and there are also a lot of other characters who are not named, and we don't focus on them very much. There isn't like a main character of this movie like at all,
Mm.
which
Yeah.
is very uncommon. I think like we don't have like a point of view
Yeah.
character. It is following ideas and groups of people,
Hmm.
because it's trying to make this point about like solidarity and collectivism.
Yeah. Yeah, for like a narrative like this, it is true that yeah, it is unusual in that respect of even now, like movies tend to have like one central point of view character. Whereas, yeah, you're right, this doesn't really. And yet it still works. It still feels like you're able to kind of get caught up in it. It's not as distancing as it might come across.
Which I was surprised by, honestly. Like
Hmm.
I feel like, there's a reason why a lot of movies follow a principal character or a couple characters,
Yeah.
is because like they offer you a viewpoint into what's happening. But this movie grips you so much with just like the specifics of what is happening,
Hmm.
that uh I think it still works
Hmm.
just as well, if not better.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I thought about naturally this movie is like probably one of the most sort of things it's most famous for is its editing, and it's sort of like its place in like the Soviet school of montage editing and that sort of thing. I was less montagey than I think I either remembered or thought it would be,
Uh-huh.
in terms of like most of the editing is pretty most of the scenes play out within like a single time frame. Like there's not a lot of weird wild sort of like playing with time or space. It's like a scene plays out in a single space among many different characters and there's a lot going on, but it's like it isn't necessarily playing with time or space in the way that I think of with like montage editing, how it's like kind of throws that out the window. And I feel like this film doesn't do that as much as some of like the later 20s, like Man with the Movie Camera is just like I feel like Ziga Vertov is going further in that direction of just like abandoning
Time and
space,
space.
spatial or like temporal continuity, I guess. But this movie is the editing is so much about creating like pacing and tension and
Yeah.
like cutting between like creating like stillness by like cutting around to like a bunch of things. Even though it's a quick edits, it's like creating the sense of like I feel like early on in the movie there's such a sense of like bottled energy that's happening where it's like
Yeah, anticipation.
there's all this stuff that's just building, 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 and then it just kind of explodes. And that happens a couple times throughout the movie where it just like will build and build and build and build tension until it's kind of released by something. Um And that's something that is we've seen a bit of that with like the you know the sort of woman trapped in a room movies that are about kind of creating the sense of tension and pacing, but it's like
Wait, what are
the
you talking about? Women trapped in a room
you know
movies?
the D.W. Griffith classic,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know, um,
Lone operator.
yeah, suspense, you
Suspense.
know,
Better
one of
example.
those the medicine cabinet or whatever, the medicine bottle, the worst one. Rewatching this movie with an eye towards like how it's kind of pushing editing forwards. It was less montagey than I had sort of thought it would be, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's like using. I think what's special about it is that it's using some of these principles with a very focused purpose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Uh, that's part of what my issue with Vertov movies is, at least as far as I've seen them or remember them, is that they don't seem focused.
Right.
Uh, but this movie is taking those ideas and then using them very deliberately uh, to tell stories,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and using the editing to emphasize the emotion of stories.
Yeah. I feel like Ziger Vertov is playing with the form probably more so than Sergei Eisenstein is.
Hmm.
But Sergei Eisenstein is actually like doing narrative stuff with it. And so it feels a lot more impactful. And you're able to get emotionally invested in it in a way that Ziger Vertov stuff is just sort of like neat.
Yeah. Um, there's a point where we move to the most famous part of
Mm,
this movie,
yeah.
which is the Odessa Steps
The most
sequence.
famous stairs in all of cinema.
Until we got to Joker,
Oh God.
2019.
No, I still think this takes a cake.
Oh God, how does this even get set up?
After the mutiny and they take over the battleship, the I guess this would be the army of the Russian Empire gets sent in to kind of quell the rebellion or the mutiny. And there are all these people who are sort of like camped out on the steps and they get sort of cornered. They send a bunch of soldiers down from the top of the steps and start kind of shooting into the crowd and chasing them down. And there's this kind of mad stampede down the stairs. And then when they get to the bottom of the stairs, there's more soldiers at the bottom of the stairs, and they're kind of trapped between, and they all get massacred.
Yeah, yeah. And it's pretty much all like civilians who are getting
Yeah,
killed,
it's
just
all like
people who
old women, children, baby
yeah.
carriages.
And so yeah, it's making this kind of another sort of emotional case for uh the revolution,
Mm,
in like showing the kind of monstrosity of the old empire.
yeah,
uh and uh this scene has a lot of motion. It also has a lot of quick cutting. It's got a lot of violence in it.
mm-hmm.
um this
It also is very. It does a really good job of suggesting violence without explicitly showing it. Always.
True, but it also shows some pretty
It
explicit
does. It does
violence.
both. Yes.
uh Probably the most famous shot from this movie is from this scene, which is a woman who kind of either gets shot in the eye or like has some kind of like shrapnel that gets in her eye, and she's like clutching her face, and there's all this blood coming down from her eye. This is during this scene to a poor old woman. The other kind of famous
Mm-hmm.
shot from this scene is
The oft copied or homaged.
the off copied, and honestly I think it goes on a little too long, and like it's trying to build that tension like
Mm,
this movie is good at, but then it maybe pushes it a little too far and becomes a little silly, but maybe that's just in retrospect. uh the scene of the baby carriage that is tilting right on the edge
yeah.
of falling down the stairs. And is it gonna fall? Oh no, there's a baby in there. What happens? And then the carriage rolls down the stairs and crashes.
Yeah.
Uh,
Rolls down the stairs as like people are fleeing and being shot. And
yeah,
I don't know. I think it's still a pretty great scene. Like
it's very
yeah.
effective. Yeah, it's good. I just like it pushed it a little far for me to think it was like a little silly, but
Right. It's
I
also
think at
like it's one of those things where once it's been in like The Simpsons, it's kind of harder to take it seriously as like a
yeah.
real dramatic scene. But it's like most things that have been parodied in The Simpsons, it's like, yeah, you go back to it, it works in its original context.
The first time that I saw The Shining was at the Alamo Draft House,
Hmm.
and I was watching the pre-show before that, and they were playing
The
parts
Shinning.
of the Shinning from The Simpsons, and I was honestly kind of mad that they did that because I the scene in The Shining where uh Jack is like losing his mind and chasing Wendy up the stairs with the
Hmm.
baseball bat or the axe or whatever, uh and he's like making these weird faces and noises, and it's like creepy, but like it's just on the edge of silly.
Hmm.
uh but it's riding a fine line, and I think having just watched the Simpsons episode where it pushes it over that
Right.
line kind of ruined that scene for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. Damn.
But
Um.
we'll get to The Shining.
Yeah.
At- as this massacre is happening, it kind of gets back to the people on the ship, uh, that the Russian Empire is kind of doing all this horrendous stuff to try and quell the rebellion. So they turn the turrets of their ship in toward the shore, and they blow up the house of the governor or whoever,
Yeah.
the head honcho in charge of the government. There are some stone lions
Some
outside of
surprised
the
lions.
yeah, it is in kind of the most conspicuous usage of montage.
Right. Yeah.
The the lions kind of stand up and are shocked at what is happening as the house around them explodes.
Hmm.
Um, and so the soldiers end up kind of uh uh I don't know, taking over,
Yeah.
and then the glorious communists win.
Yeah, I think some of the editing in this movie is a bit sloppy from from like with modern standards. I do think this movie does a good job of like not every new shot is necessarily showing you more information, but like the repetition of them is really important and that sort of thing. But there's occasional parts in this movie where I'm like, just because you can't edit doesn't mean you have to.
As an editor, were you a little like tone it down?
Well, it's like I see what it's trying to do, and I think it is mostly effective in that thing of like the the mere fact of the amount of edits is like creating this sense of pacing or this sense of rhythm. Um, and yeah, there's a reason I think this movie is like still taught in school to like show good use of editing. Um, I don't know, like if I had to come up with something negative to say about this movie, I'm like, well, some of it's maybe a little sloppy, but that's only really taking it from like a modern, uh, with modern eyes. Still better than Taken 3 or whatever.
I think that also, if you compare it to a lot of other movies at the time, if you were to look at the editing that they're doing, like this is doing so much editing,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, if you're to look at some of the editing in these more plainer movies, you could say like that it's sloppy in certain ways too. But I don't know. Yeah, I like this
Yeah.
a lot. I should say actually that uh, I might have misstated the scene where the red flag was shown. I think that's more toward the end.
Oh, well.
Uh, but so don't come correcting us unless you want to hop in the YouTube comments and increase our
There
engagement.
you go. Please correct us.
Yeah, no, I think this movie is real good.
Yeah.
Hot take: Battleship Potemkin, good movie.
Yeah. Agreed.